General is appointed by the president and serves at the president's will. But we've also had a division between the president and the Justice Department on some issues because of some egregious abuses that have been passed. They believe that's also unconstitutional and it's a danger to democracy if there's somebody like the Attorney General who's unelected sort of acting on their own will. Same goes for the FBI director. And so we've seen the Trump administration already acting on this. We see them, for example, firing line prosecutors, career Justice Department officials. We see directing an investigation into Act Blue, the major Democratic donor platform that happened just last week. So they've started to move forward on making the Justice Department a wing of the executive branch, or a wing of the presidency, that they can use to enforce their will and enforce the things that they talk about elsewhere in the plan.
There's also the matter of civil servants in the government. Civil service is an institution that's close to 100, I guess more than 100 years old, right? The idea being that you want people to be hired not for their political connections, but for their qualifications, and that their actions in government should be to serve the public and not politicians, and they're protected in that way. President Trump had this idea of changing that with something called Schedule F in the first Trump term, which I gather he did issue an executive order about, but it wasn't really effective. You want to explain what that was supposed to do and why it didn't work?
Yeah, so Schedule F is the idea that there are a lot of employees who are civil servants who should be converted to political appointees. A civil servant has a lot of protections. They can challenge any firing, they can be fired for cause, they can go through a long review process, and often if there's not cause, they will get their firing overturned or they'll get some sort of payout. But the president doesn't want people who are going to be slow to respond. He wants them to be doing exactly what he wants. So if you convert them to political appointees can be fired at any time for any reason by the president who appointed them. This is another Russell Vought idea, who is the head of Office of Management and Budget and was the first Trump administration on either end of this time at Project 2025. So they issued an executive order along these lines at the tail end of the first Trump administration. And then in office, he withdrew the order. And so it was kind of dead there. But it was something that the Trump administration has now started pursuing on its own.
Right. And, it's a little strange because civil service is not just a notion, right? It's a policy established by acts of Congress. What made those in Project 2025 think the president has the authority to sweep away this protection from thousands of employees just with an executive order?
It falls down to this idea of a unitary executive. They see things like civil servants who can't be fired by the president, and they think it is abhorrent to the Constitution. Because if the president is in charge of the executive branch, he should be able to do what he wants with the executive branch. And so when you see a civil servant who can't do that, they think that violates the Constitution, and it just makes it very hard for a president to do what he wants. We obviously saw Trump really struggling during his first term in office to do a lot of things he promised to do and to do a lot of things he was trying to do. And for them, a lot of that blame came down to civil servants who tried to block it by, following rules or regulations, maybe working specifically to the rule rather than trying to get things done.
Right. Now we should note that there were thousands of employees in the government that are not in civil service jobs, but who serve at the will of the president and his appointees. So there is an idea here that policymakers should have some flexibility to change things if they want. And so a lot of jobs at the top aren't civil service. I gather one of the things in the first Trump administration is that some of those went vacant, either because they weren't didn't have it together to appoint them all, or wanted to save money.
Yeah, they wanted to save money, and they point out that you can save money in an intermediate term and actually cost money and cost yourself effectiveness in the long term. Something maybe we're seeing with Elon Musk's Doge. They also just didn't have people trained. There were so many people who did not want to serve in the first Trump administration. They simply could not fill jobs with qualified people. And sometimes when they tried to appoint people who were not qualified, Congress would not confirm them. And that's another one of the motivations for the big training of people and vetting of people for these jobs that Project 2025 did.
Yeah. So do we have any idea how many of these 10,000 people in the Project 2025 database actually got jobs in the Trump administration?
We don't. That database hasn't been made public. And we can look at a lot of the people who are contributors to Project 2025 and how they have come into top positions. But many of the people we're talking about are not names that I think would be household names and not in jobs that most people would think about or encounter.